everyone, another video, another Tuesday, and before I begin this particular video, I just wanted to confirm a little bit from the last video that I did about the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Somebody commented and apparently said that something that I said wasn't, I guess, historically accurate, and I'm here to say that I'm not 100% sure about everything. I'm not the smartest person in the world. I'm not a super genius. I'm not really aware so much of the Covenant's history, but from what I read up on and what I remember from watching documentaries, and then from reading the encyclopedia, which I did read, and that I will read to you. And I did go over the video from what I was saying, because the only part that I was trying to make that deals with history is just the Ark of the Covenant itself, and I just only gave a few sentences on it, and for the most part what I said was pretty much true in that context. However, I did make a few assumptions, but I made it clear that they were assumptions, and I will explain this as I continue on in this video before we talk about the music, because again, it will be titled Music Tuesdays, but I just wanted to confirm to this person that I'm not stupid and I know what I'm talking about. It's just sometimes I do kind of like to make assumptions, and again, the Jewish faith within itself, there are a lot of interpretations on certain things, and there's a lot of symbolism in Judaism. You might be wondering, why do I know this? Because I am in a Jewish club. I'm not Jewish, but my best friend's Jewish, and in particular Passover, they had a lot of symbols, and she basically asked us, what do you think this means? And then she would take any word, and she's like, it can mean anything. It can mean anything to you. So for the most part, and she is a rabbi, so she does know things through a religious as well as a historical context. So when I'm making assumptions, I was automatically thinking of her because from what I know from Jewish history is kind of pertained to her, as well as to the things that I've read up on. So I want to read to you briefly what I said that had to deal with the Ark of the Covenant, so I can just kind of put this to bed and we can all move on and move forward. So let me just say this, and this is what I said, and this is sort of paraphrasing because again I didn't really get all of my words exactly, but this is basically the gist of what I said. I said, it's a very religious and a very special artifact that has been hidden. I think it is said that it's supposed to contain the 10 Commandments given to Moses, and the Jewish people used it for a big ceremony. It's a big symbol, I guess, for God's order. And this is, I think, this is just the part that I was just assuming. I didn't say that I claimed that I knew that it was God's order, because again, the person didn't really say what I said was it was historically inaccurate. He just said, oh, you should be embarrassed and shamed, blah, 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 blah. And to be honest, I'm not ashamed. I really am not, because when I looked over the video, I didn't really see anything that wasn't accurate, and I'll explain this to you when I read my encyclopedia. And it's said to be and I'll continue on with what I said, and it's said to be very mysterious because we don't know where it is. Archaeologists have never been able to find it. So, yes. And so that there's no more confusion, and that was the only part that I was talking with into the context of actual history. Everything else that I was talking about was dealing with the movie, not necessarily the Ark of the Covenant and what exactly it is. So let me read for you to why everything that I said, pretty much, except for that one sentence that said, I guess it symbolizes God's order. Because again, it could be interpreted, I think, that way, because the 10 Commandments were God's order. They were his laws. So I don't know why this person suddenly thinks that what I said is not accurate, but I will read off the teeny paragraph that's given in my encyclopedia, because again, even the encyclopedia doesn't really know much about the covenant. But here's basically what it says. it says the Ark of the Covenant, Hebrew Ano Arbrit, I guess. That's what it's translated to mean in Hebrew. And in Judaism and Christianity, the ornate, gold-plated wooden chest that in biblical times housed the 2 tablets of the law given to Moses by God. The ark rested in the Holy of Holies inside the tabernacle. I apologize, I may be pronouncing that incorrectly, and was seen only by the highest priest on Yom Kippur. So again, it is used for a ceremony here. Yom Kippur is a Jewish holiday, and I guess you could interpret it as it being maybe if that is interpreted to be as a ceremony, I'm not sure, but from the most part from what I'm reading is that they did use it for sort of a religious, holiday, and holidays involve ceremonies at times, and the priest was the only one that was able to see it and witness it. So I don't know about I don't know how that is not historically accurate. But continuing, which is the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, and the Levites, priestly functionaries, carried the ark with them during their wanderings in the wilderness. Following the conquest of Canaan, the Promised Land, the ark resided at Shiloh, but from time to time it was carried into battle by the Israelites. Taken to Jerusalem by the King David, it was eventually placed in the temple of King Solomon. The final fate of the ark is unknown. So again, what I said was right. We don't know where it is. We don't know where the Ark of the Covenant is. We have a few theories, no idea where it is now, where it resides, and again, that's because it's just very old. It's obviously thousands of years old. So I still don't understand what I said. What out of what I said was historically inaccurate. I just made the assumption that it could be a big symbol, I guess, for God's order, and I explained my reasoning behind that. And I think that's really all I can say for the most part. And I also, I think, made an assumption when I said that it's used for a ceremony, because again, that's what I would think, because if it was considered like this very sacred kind of thing, you'd think that they would use it for some sort of ceremony and some sort of holiday or ritual. Again, you could say that maybe I should have said a different wording, but it is used on Yom Kippur, and it's only seen by the high priest, so they do use it. It's still there. It's something that's just mysterious, because only the priest was allowed to see it, apparently. But they did take it around wandering from various different places, and it actually says from my encyclopedia that the ark resided at Shiloh, but from time to time was carried into battle by the Israelites. So it was also used as kind of a, I guess, maybe in times of war. So again, historical encyclopedia, and this is Britannica, and Britannica is a really big name, encyclopedia. So to all of you who were just wondering about that, just wanted to clarify a bit. And I was thinking the next time that I do a video where I do a classic review, I will try to maybe just quote from my encyclopedia, so that there's no like confusion or anything of that nature, and then everything else that I address is within the context of the movie, not within the context of actual historical fact. So to that person who commented, who didn't respond to my comment, I just wanted to say that I hold nothing against you, and I'm not trying to be an idiot. I was just making some assumptions from the historical facts that I've already known about it. So I still don't know what you found was historically not correct, and that I should be embarrassed by my explanation, because I'm not. I'm not embarrassed by my explanation. I'm not a history buff. I'm not an expert in history. I like historical fiction, but for the most part, I'm not someone that you go to for history. I was just explaining just something briefly so that people knew exactly what the Ark of the Covenant was, and so that they could understand, oh, okay, this is why it's so important. That's all I was trying to get out with that. But I just wanted to confirm that with everybody so that everybody knows, and that not everybody's going around saying that, you know, I'm somehow dumb, because I'm not. It's just, that's all that I remembered from reading up on it, and from documentaries, because I remember watching a few things about the Ark of the Covenant, but again, those were a really long time ago, and I think that's probably why my memory might be a little bit blurred onto that topic. But again, I didn't say anything that wasn't necessarily not true. I just made a few assumptions from the historical facts that I already have, which was the fact that it did contain the 10 Commandments. Or supposedly. According to the encyclopedia, yes. So again, if, and I think this will probably come up in Indiana Jones, because Indiana Jones does deal with a lot of history, and if it does come up again, I will use the encyclopedia, and I will quote it. So if some artifact from the Temple of Doom or the Last Crusade, if that comes up, which I'm guessing probably will, I'll be sure to read off a little bit of history to you guys so that it's clear that what I am saying is fact, and that everything else that I'm saying is within the context of the film. So, just something else to keep in mind, and just something that I wanted to confirm to my viewer. But again, he didn't respond. He probably will respond maybe a little bit later on today, I'm not sure. But, yeah, if he wants to say anything, because I did watch the video again, and everything else that I was saying was in the context of the film. I wasn't talking about historical facts. So, I guess that's really all I can say. And yeah, so let's just close this up. And if you want to learn more about the Ark's history, I suggest definitely encyclopedias and books and things of that nature. And maybe not best to rely on the internet, because again, I usually don't try to rely on Wikipedia or things for my sources. But again, sometimes Wikipedia is the only thing I can find, and for the most part, I think Wikipedia is okay with as far as just small, important bits of information, but not necessarily really deep insight information. But for just like little facts, little things, I use Wikipedia for. But again, encyclopedias helpful, very helpful. Books, very helpful. If you want to learn about history, definitely recommendable. But don't try to look through it through the context of an Indiana Jones movie. All I was doing was just trying to explain what the Ark of the Covenant was. That's all I was doing. And from what I read from my encyclopedia, pretty much everything that I said was relatively correct. And for the most part, when I made assumptions, I clearly stated that I was making an assumption and not saying that it's actually true. So, don't know what else to say. So if the dude responds, I'll probably just tell him, watch this video. And if you end up watching this video, I'm not saying that I'm smart or that I'm a genius, but what I am saying is I don't understand why you think all of a sudden my explanation is somehow not accurate or not relevant. And I did look over this, and I did try to invest time into it. So, I mean, I don't know what else to tell you, dude. But, that's really all I can say about that. Now moving on to something completely different. Now we're going to talk about music. Yes, music, because we're talking about music because it's Tuesday. And what I wanted to talk about in this video, as you probably can see by the title, is songs dealing with some sort of faith. Now, this faith doesn't necessarily have to be religious. It can be interpreted as religious. You can interpret lyrics pretty much however you want. I mean, for the most part, sometimes lyrics are pretty clear and definite, but sometimes people get different emotions and feelings out of it that maybe don't pertain to religion necessarily. So these are just some of the faith-based songs that I really like and I think are worth looking into, whether you are religious or whether you're not. So without further ado, let me start with something that we probably have all heard of, and that is Haedel's Messiah. And you might be wondering, why would I mention a classic musician? Well, Haedel is really well known, really famous, sort of in the context of the Mozart Beethoven crowd. And I really like Messiah for what it is. It is very religious. It does pertain things in a very religious context. If you listen to the lyrics and the people singing, you will notice that there's a lot of references to God and so. But for me personally, I get different kind of emotions out of it. And I think that has to do in part because I think the song has just been so well known by a lot of people, because it has been done, I think, in probably TV shows, commercials, movies. You know, there's a lot of references to this song, and, you know, people when they say hallelujah, they get kind of different feelings out of that. And I don't really, for me, I interpreted that in more of the way of how they show it in, again, forms of media. In particular, the emotion of sort of relief. This song sounds very releasing. It kind of takes away all of the stress that one has in life, and it kind of just says, you know, hallelujah. You know, you're finally in this state of happiness, and I think that's what a lot of the this particular movie or particular song tries to do within the context of maybe movies, TV, and they don't really pertain it to a religious kind of scenario. You know, like somebody gets off of work, hallelujah. You know, it's very loose. It's so funny how the lyrics are just so religious, but it's interpreted by people in such an unreligious context. And for me, that's kind of how it is. It's sort of dealing with faith, but it doesn't really make me necessarily think so much of faith in a religious context, but more in the faith in having the release and the relief of not having to deal with stress, not having to deal with you know, issues, problems. So again, I think that's really all I can say within that particular context is that it's used as kind of a relief for people. Like that something is literally lifted off of their shoulders. Sometimes like the burdens of life aren't there anymore. Now there's other ways that people interpret this, I think. I think for the most part they also can interpret it as something that's that has happened to somebody that makes them happy. So it can be those two emotions of relief and happiness can be mixed together, but sometimes they may be separate. Like when somebody is going to go to a place where they wanted to go to, or doing something that they wanted to do, or experience something that they wanted to, it's sort of like hallelujah, you know, I can finally do this. It's kind of that kind of emotion, like that eternal sort of bliss, or eternal feeling of happiness within the moment that makes this kind of song resonate maybe with people, that the feeling that I had at that moment is something that no one can take away from me. This moment of just hallelujah, you know, it's a moment of just sheer bliss and happiness. I think that's what other people interpret the song as. And usually they don't really refer to the religious references, but the religious references are there in the song if you listen to it really well. And for the most part, I really enjoy it. I like listening to it. I like it when it's put in a comedic context. I like when it's a song when people just kind of think of something and then they just go, hallelujah. In particular, when my exams were over for college, and by the way, the person who was talking about the Noah's Ark with the historical accuracy, I do go to college and I do have an education, thank you. But back to the whole point that I was making, which is the fact that as far as songs go, this is just very different in the way we see it than what it's actually talking about. But again, that's what I kind of get out of it, for the most part, is that it's sort of a song of bliss and a song of relief. And, you know, when my exams were over, it was a relief to me, personally. It was a sort of release of all of that pressure and that problems that I was feeling, and I could finally just let all of that go, and I didn't have to worry about that anymore. So having that pressure, having that pressure being lifted off your shoulders, you know, you can't, for me, I can't help but think of this song because I think it's just so ingrained within our culture. You automatically know what that song is. Whether you like the song or not is a completely different story, but the fact that you know what it is, it just can't be denied because it's just been everywhere and it's been used everywhere and it's been used in comedic contexts. You know, somebody, you know, experiencing something that is happy, but it's amusing in some way, shape, or form. And again, so Haedel's Messiah. Can't say nothing more. And my friend, she did this for the church choir at her school, and it's not an easy song to do, especially when they have to really build everything up and really make it big, and when they do have to get to those high notes, and she says it wasn't easy, but again, if Allie, if you're watching this, I feel your pain because that song is, just listening to it, I go, yeah, that must take some time to learn. So it is maybe a difficult song for some people to sing, but for the most part, it's just memorable. People know it. It's been used a lot. So definitely something worth looking into if you haven't like listened to the full complete song, because only people hear maybe parts of it, but not maybe the whole thing. And then if you hear the whole thing, you'll realize the religious connotations and are things that can be interpreted within the religious context, which are clearly there in the song. So again, that's all I think I can say about that particular song. Now the next song also has Hallelujah in it, and it's called Hallelujah, and it's been done by various artists, but I'm picking the one in particular that identified with me the most, and that was the version by Rufus Wainwright. And I really like this song because it sort of interprets Hallelujah in a sort of opposite way in which Haedel presents his Messiah song. It's very, how do you say this? It's sort of very depressing. It fills you sort of with like a hole. You don't really feel complete. You don't feel bliss or any of those things when you, at least when I listen to it. It makes me feel like these sad emotions of like loneliness, maybe not being accepted, things of that nature. I think for the most part, can be interpreted in that light, because it is a sort of song that does have sort of religious references in there. There's one point where it mentions David, and you can interpret that however you want. but I think the artist originally was trying to put some religious references in there, for the most part, from listening to the song. But for me, it's a song of kind of sadness. There's also God referenced in the song as well, and I sort of don't interpret this so much in a religious context, but in sort of a loss of faith, I guess you could say. And this doesn't have to be in a faith in a God, it can be anything else. With Handel's Messiah, it makes me feel like whole and complete and feel relieved. And that doesn't mean that it has to be pertained to a religious context. It can be if you want it to, but that's not necessarily how it is for me. With Hallelujah, it's sort of the same thing, but with the opposite emotions, of loss, of separation, of not feeling like that there's anything there, feeling lost. Those kinds of things really do come to mind when I listen to this song. There's one point in particular where it says, your faith was strong, but you needed proof. You saw her bathing on the roof. Her beauty in the moonlight overthrew you. She tied you to a kitchen chair. She broke your throat, and she cut your hair. And from her breath, she drew hallelujah. I think the last part I'm not sure of exactly, but I know everything else leading up to the she broke your throat and she cut your hair. Oh, and from her lips she drew the hallelujah. I think that was the last part of what it said. But for me, hearing that verse, it makes me think of, you know, how maybe when people try to reach out to others, how, you know, we may be captivated by people at times, but these people sometimes end up hurting us and making us even feel more alone and more separated from the world. So that's how at least I interpret it. There's sort of these feelings of loss mixed with sadness, and I think I remember hearing this the song the first time when I watched Shrek years back when I was a little bit younger, and yeah, for the most part, I did really enjoy it. So it just fills you with a different emotion, and it's just really relatable, I think. Even though I don't really, there's just been various interpretations on what this song could be, but they do hint at some religious references in there, because again, with David and God, so and with Hallelujah, I guess, which can be a religious sort of word. But for me, I don't really interpret it in such a religious context for the most. It makes me feel sort of a loss of faith in myself or in something that's happened within my life. And Handel's Messiah makes me gain faith. But that doesn't necessarily mean religious faith. It can mean any type of faith. So this faith thing that I'm talking about is very open. It doesn't have to be God. You don't have to put everything in the context of God if you don't want to. But if you want to, that's more than welcome. So I think that's really all I can say about that song. The next one I wanted to talk about was Ave Maria. And Ave Maria, I'm going to be talking about the version that's German. I really like the German version not only because I studied German and because I really like German, but I think it sounds really beautiful. I think the singer does a really good job of singing the song and bringing out the emotions of the song. It's just very pretty. I mean, I like the song because it's just really pretty. It sounds pretty. It's very open to feelings, I think. The lyrics, not so much. There are like religious. There is a religious context behind it. It really just talks about Mary, in particular, and by Mary I mean in the context of the Christian faith, Jesus's mom. So it can be interpreted in that context, in that religious context, and probably in that way. But the emotions that I feel are kind of one of, you know, sort of purity, feeling sort of pure. You know, what is, and then I often question, like, what is purity? Is really purity really being a virgin? Is it really, you know, being not having certain forms of knowledge, I guess? Is that purity? Is that innocence? So often this song kind of makes me feel sort of innocent in a way, and sort of represents, I think, femininity in a way that can be interpreted in a religious or irreligious context, and sort of makes me feel like I truly am a woman, like I truly am a human being. So I guess that's really all I can really say with that particular song and how it makes me feel, for the most part. It leaves things open with questions for me. I mean, like, you know, what is purity, and what does it mean to be pure, and what does it mean to be, you know, it's sort of a questioning of different things that goes on within my head. So the song makes me think, even though I don't, even though I do know knowledge of German, I don't know all of the lyrics. I had to look up actually the translation because I didn't really necessarily even know myself what it was saying, but it's kind of addressing things on sort of a purity level, like Mary is pure because of her virginity. For the most part, that's what it's actually saying. But for me, it makes me question things sort of outside of that context, in sort of a philosophical light. So, again, you can interpret it however this song ever you want, but I really enjoy it. I really like it, and it makes me question sort of my faith in being pure or being good. You know, what it means to be good, and all those things I think really just come to mind when I listen to the song. So that's why I mention it. It allows me to think. So, good job, Ave Maria. Now the next one I'm going to mention is called "One of Us" by Joan Osborne. I always have trouble with names. I'm never good with names, but from what I get from this song is basically the narrator is asking, like, what if God was one of us? Like the song says, one of us, or the song's title. And I find that very interesting and fascinating, you know, because there's just so many different interpretations out there, of what God is and what God means and what God is. So I really like the song because it's addressing sort of things in a very loose sense and kind of saying, like, what if, you know, he was one of us? What if he was just walking down the street? What if, you know, if God is just us? What if it's asking questions. The song, you know, asks questions, and I like that because I like these sort of philosophical songs that ask things in that context, like, what if God was one of us? Just a slob like one of us. And I believe this song is actually from the 90s, so I remember really growing up with this song. I remember listening and hearing that song constantly played on the radio, and it's still played on my radio now, which I'm really happy for. And I just like the song because it addresses things that, you know, we don't really talk about so much, I think. You know, we don't really question things, and I think it's important to think and understand and interpret things. And I think this song is a really good embodiment of that interpretation, you know, of showing you know, hey, what if God was one of us? And what does that mean, being one of us? And asking that sort of question. I like what the song's addressing. So, and I like how it sounds. So, for the most part, enjoy it. And I guess within a faith-based context, it doesn't really necessarily make me think of God so much in a sense, but like the different interpretations of what it is. It makes me question, what is God? Like, what is God? That's basically the main question that I ask. So that's really all I can really say about this song. And I guess God can be interpreted as a means of faith, so again, and just because it does reference God doesn't mean that you have to apply these lyrics in religious context, because God can mean whatever you want it to mean. So I think that's really all I can say about that particular song. The next one is called You're a God by Vertical Horizon, and apparently a lot of people get this particular song by Bruce Almighty. I think I heard it before I ever saw Bruce Almighty, but I really like this song because it can be interpreted as somebody being a god to somebody else. It could be being the god that you worship, but I really like the fact that it's sort of saying like, you're a god and I am not, and you know, instead of Joan's song where it's talking about like God kind of being with us and sort of intertwined with us, this song kind of brings a separation between the two. It's basically saying like, you're a god and I am not, you know, sort of saying that there is this sort of like kind of hierarchy going on. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be God within a religious context. It can mean, you know, you could see somebody else or like a famous person as a god to you. It can be interpreted various ways. So I think your God is is sort of dealing with that sort of separation, and I think it makes me think about that separation. You know, what if there is something out there that's beyond me and beyond of what I can interpret and beyond like my control or things like that. I think it's sort of addressing things through a faith-based level and understanding, you know, like, hey, you know what, you may be you may be so great, but I'm not as great. And I think that's kind of what the song's sort of saying. And you know, and it's sort of like letting go of that hierarchy. It's sort of kind of letting, because it says, and I just thought I'd let you go. At one point the song says that. But again, it is sort of addressing that separation and sort of that hierarchy of maybe how we treat each other. And I just like it because it makes me feel like I am the narrator speaking, because I feel like I'm a little bit more, you know, separated from what I claim to know, because I don't think I really can know for certain the things that are unknown, and you know maybe what other people know. So it's kind of that separation. I think that's really highlighted in the song. I think does a good job of doing. Now, next song's a really big one, called Losing My Religion by R.E.M. One of their biggest hits, and really, really good song. Probably one of the greatest songs, according maybe to some people. And I really love this song. Reason why I like this song in particular is just because even though the song itself, I mean, I've heard from sort of a consensus of people that it's not really about religion per se. And the funny thing is I interpret it as a religious context, but that doesn't mean that it necessarily, that the artist was interpreting in that way. I believe the lead singer's name is Michael Stipe or Stipes. I'm not sure exactly of the context of the last name, and again, I'm not good with names. But some people have said it's a song about him coming to terms with his sexuality. Some people have said it's about him, or about a relationship. Losing my religion is sort of losing like my mind, losing my faith, I guess, in this person. And it can be interpreted that way, because again, this is faith. This is not necessarily religion. But for me, I kind of interpret it more in a religious context. For me, it kind of, I just look at things and I sometimes have doubts at times. And these doubts are having to do with religion, doubting certain things, questioning certain things, wondering if what I believe is maybe just all a dream. Those kinds of things I think are really important to investigate and to understand, and that's what I interpret for me when I listen to the lyrics. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's what the lyrics are really addressing. So just something for you to all know about. But I really like the song. I really like how it's expressing sort of that same feeling, kind of like Rufus Wainwright's song, that sort of loss of faith, that sort of separation, in the context of, I can't, I can't believe in sort of like this thing anymore, whatever that thing may be. I can't have faith in this thing anymore. It's sort of a loss of faith. And I think a loss of faith is very powerful and very resonative onto people, for the most part. So, can be interpreted religiously, but from what I've heard, it's not really technically about religion, but I kind of choose to interpret it that way for me when I listen to the song. But can be something worth looking into. Now the next one and the last one that I will mention is Angel by Sarah McLachlan. And Sarah McLachlan's song I really like because it is really sad, and you might be honestly thinking of those like animal commercials that she's in, and that's what I think of too every time I listen now to that song. I think of the puppy with the cute eyes, and it's so sad. It's so sad. But I did hear of this song before all of that came about, but because I kind of grew up on it, and I did see that the movie that the song's based on, City of Angels, which I guess can be interpreted as either a good or a bad movie. I'm not sure. Something worth, I guess, looking into. I think the Nostalgia Chick did a review of it, but check that out if you're interested. But for the most part, I think Angel is sort of dealing with the loss of a person, like a person dying. And I guess the way I interpret it is more not so much like an angel with wings or anything of that nature. I sort of interpret it as something that becomes part of you now because that person is gone. That person is not at the exterior anymore. You only have your mental capacity. You only have your memories. And I think that's really what the song is really deep down addressing, and sort of how you deal with that kind of loss and the fact that you can't be really with that person anymore. You're just now in the arms of an angel. You're in the arms of something that's not there anymore, something that you can't see. So that's what I interpret it as, for me. You can interpret it various different ways. You can interpret it through a religious context. You can think of like the angels with the wings, or that's not necessarily how I interpret it, but I think it is sort of dealing with death and dealing with loss. And death plays a really big role in the City of Angels if you watch that movie. So that's really what I interpret through this song is dealing with death and loss. So it's a really powerful song. It's a really good song, and I really like her song. And I think that's really all I can say. Any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And just lastly, to the person who was addressing me about the Lost Ark thing, I apologize if anything I said that you thought was somehow not correct. I wasn't trying to be ignorant. I wasn't trying to sound like I didn't know, I knew better, because I don't. I know I don't know better, because I'm not a history expert. I don't know these things. But from what I could gather from the encyclopedia and what I said, and just by me making assumptions doesn't automatically make them true or false. They're just assumptions. And from what I said that was historically accurate, was in the encyclopedia if you go back to what I said previously and from what I've read from the encyclopedia. And I will mention that again. I will try to quote the encyclopedia. So if you feel like something, whatever I said, was not right, I will make sure that next time, for all the other Indiana Jones movies and all movies that are pertaining to some historical evidence and some historical findings, I will make sure to use my Britannica Britannica encyclopedias. And I will look up the exact words that I want to say, and I will read them off, so that people know that I am using a source, and that I am getting my information from historical facts. Because I don't want to, like, distort facts. I want to be true to facts. I want to be able to express facts. It's just, sometimes I'm not 100% sure about everything, and I don't think even historians all the time are 100% sure about everything. Some historians go back and forth in certain circles about what this particular object means, or what this particular object is used for, and all these things are, when it really comes down to even top historians still need to do their homework, need to do their research and find things, and sometimes that research doesn't coincide with somebody else. But I will use this as evidence. So if you are concerned by me pertaining historical factual information, I will just tell you it's here, it's real, it's a real encyclopedia, and I will use it for the Temple of Doom and all the other ones that are dealing with some sort of historical context in the future. So again, I think that's really all I can say. Any questions, comments, concerns, more than happy to answer them. And until tomorrow, and I will all see you later. And to the person who commented, I understand your concern, and I think I addressed all I could address in this video. So if you respond back, just watch this video and you will know what my response is to you, and that I will try to make sure that maybe I shouldn't say, oh, I think maybe this is. Maybe I should just quote from an actual source and then just say, yeah, that's the historical facts behind it, moving on. Talk about the movie. So I'll try to be sure to do that. But any questions, comments, concerns, more than happy to answer them. And until next time, bye-bye, everybody.